President Trump was told by the Attorney General that he is in the Jeffrey Epstein files. He was told he was in the files 2 months ago and then last week said, no, he wasn't. He was. This was during a briefing on the findings of the Justice Department's review of the documents related to Epstein. That's according to sources familiar with the discussion. Those sources said the Justice Department's review found that the files appeared to include several unsubstantiated claims that they determined not to be credible, including those relating to Trump. Bondi also raised in the meeting that several names of other high-profile figures were mentioned, the official said. And it's worth noting that being mentioned in the files does not in any way indicate wrongdoing. The Wall Street Journal, who first reported this story, said that AG Bondi, who was joined in the briefing by her deputy Todd Blanche, who previously served as President Trump's attorney in the criminal hush money trial. The briefing took place in May, weeks before the Justice Department released a memo on July 6th attempting to close the book on Jeffrey Epstein, which said, quote, no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. That memo kicked up a furor in the president's supporters, among them, that continues to this day.
Pam Bondi's bombshell testimony just exposed everything, and the political world isn't reacting. It's detonating. For months, denials were repeated, narratives were tightly managed, and the White House insisted that the president had nothing to do with the chaos surrounding the Epstein files. But that version of events didn't collapse because of a leak or because of a journalist digging in the shadows. It collapsed because the one person trusted to safeguard the law walked into a federal courtroom, raised her right hand, and said something no one in the Oval Office ever expected to hear. What happened in Judge Moss's courtroom didn't just change the conversation, it ripped the conversation away from them entirely. And once you understand what Bondi admitted, what she confirmed, and what she authenticated, you'll understand why Washington is spiraling and why Trump's own allies are scrambling for exits. The moment Bondi entered the courtroom, something felt different. You didn't need a transcript to notice it. Her hands trembled, her breathing was uneven, and whatever confidence she usually carried into high-stakes briefings had vanished. The courtroom, already tense from Mark Meadows' earlier testimony, seemed to pull the oxygen straight out of her lungs. Her lawyers knew what was coming. They had fought for weeks to block this appearance, arguing privilege, immunity, anything that could create distance between Bondi and the question everyone was waiting for. But Judge Moss had ruled, attorney-client privilege does not extend to discussions involving potential criminal conspiracy. She had no firewall left. And when she sat down, the room sensed what her legal team had tried to prevent. She was going to have to tell the truth. The prosecutor didn't start with drama. He didn't raise his voice. He walked her step by step through the timeline, the DOJ review of Epstein documents, the confusion created by early statements that Trump wasn't in the files, and later corrections that he actually had been mentioned. Bondi attempted to stay composed, mentioning that internal reviews flagged certain claims as unverified and unsubstantiated, making sure to emphasize that merely being mentioned in documents does not equal wrongdoing. But she didn't look like someone defending a narrative. She looked like someone stalling before a cliff's edge. Then the prosecutor stopped easing her in. He put the entire room on a collision course and asked the question that has now set off a legal and political earthquake. Did you, under instruction from President Trump, authorize the destruction of evidence related to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation? The room fell into a silence so thick it seemed alive. Her attorneys erupted, objections flew, arguments about privilege returned from the dead, and accusations of prosecutorial overreach filled the air. But Judge Moss cut through the noise. His ruling stood. The question remained. And there, under oath, with her career and future hanging in the balance, Pam Bondi spoke the sentence that shattered the entire defense strategy. Yes, the president instructed log destruction for national security. Those 16 words detonated like explosives beneath the foundation of the administration's public narrative. Her justification sounded rehearsed. National security, a term broad enough to hide behind, but flimsy enough to collapse under scrutiny. The courtroom didn't buy it. Judge Moss didn't buy it. And the moment her answer hit the record, everything changed. This wasn't rumor. This wasn't speculation. This wasn't a political rival throwing accusations on cable news. This was the sitting Attorney General of the United States confessing to the destruction of evidence and directly tying that action to the president. Judge Moss, normally a model of restraint, didn't hold back. He stated clearly that Bondi's admission alone constituted felony obstruction of justice, a crime carrying up to a 20-year sentence. Before the room could even absorb that, he scheduled a contempt hearing for the following day. The nation's top law enforcement official was now facing the very real possibility of immediate sanctions, possibly even arrest. But the shockwaves had only begun. Because the prosecution wasn't done. They introduced the fatal piece of evidence, the tape. For weeks, rumors had circulated about a leaked audio recording allegedly capturing Trump issuing directives about Epstein-related evidence. Many dismissed it as political fiction. Others insisted it was manipulated. But when the prosecution played the recording, the courtroom didn't hear distortion or uncertainty. They heard a voice that was unmistakable, saying a phrase that now sits at the center of the political crisis. Bury the Epstein list. Bondi looked like she'd been hit with a physical force. The prosecutor asked the question the entire country had been speculating about. Was this the conversation? Panic flickered across her face. Her attorneys looked hopeless. She swallowed, her resolve collapsing completely. Yes, that recording is from a conversation I had with the president regarding the evidence in question. And just like that, two separate pieces of evidence, her testimony and the recording, locked together like gears in a machine built to crush denials. Her admission validated the audio validated her confession, and the White House narrative, already fragile, disintegrated into dust. But the chain reaction didn't stop there. New reporting from Capitol Hill and internal DOJ sources exploded onto the scene within hours. Deputy FBI Director Dan Bonino was reportedly furious, blindsided, and openly considering resignation. According to individuals familiar with Bonino's conversations, he feels the DOJ mishandled the Epstein files and that the confrontation with Bondi was the breaking point. One person described him as out-of-control furious, claiming he said this fiasco destroyed his career. Another source said he threatened to quit and publicly expose Bondi unless she is fired. This wasn't quiet disagreement. This was open revolt inside federal law enforcement, a signal that the cover-up allegations weren't just legal concerns, but institutional fractures spreading like cracks through an entire building. Then came the Meadows connection. His earlier testimony described Trump ordering evidence burned. Bondi's testimony described logs being destroyed under instruction. And Kash Patel's reported involvement in delaying or freezing certain investigations suddenly looked less like bureaucratic maneuvering and more like part of a coordinated pattern. When three stories emerging months apart align with near-perfect precision, prosecutors don't call it coincidence. They call it corroboration. And Washington heard it loud and clear. Within hours of Bondi's testimony, congressional leaders triggered what many are calling the fastest impeachment mobilization in modern history. House leadership signaled that Bondi's confession was a game-over moment and began fast-tracking articles of impeachment. The focus: obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and witness tampering. The vote is being scheduled for January 6th, a date chosen intentionally, a symbolic marker of accountability exactly 4 years after the Capitol attack. And the political numbers? They're shifting in ways that were unthinkable even weeks ago. Polling data shared during testimony indicated that 65% of Americans now support conviction and removal. Trump's approval rating has plunged to 27%, the lowest ever recorded in his political career. Senators who once felt safe aligning with him are suddenly in existential danger themselves. Moderates in purple states see the writing on the wall. Institutional Republicans worried about legacy know this scandal will define their futures. And the 17 GOP votes once considered impossible for conviction suddenly don't seem that far-fetched. But in the middle of this political firestorm stands Pam Bondi, now the most critical piece on the board. She faces a contempt hearing, potential arrest, and overwhelming legal exposure. Her incentive to flip, to secure leniency, to cooperate fully with investigators is massive. Legal analysts predict she may have the most leverage of anyone still inside Trump's orbit. She knows conversations, pressure campaigns, internal directives, the full map of the administration's response to the Epstein files. She can either protect that map and risk prison time, or hand it over and save herself. And Trump's reaction to all of this? Predictable, but telling. Just days before her testimony, he praised Bondi as loyal, strong, and one of his most trusted allies. But after her confession under oath, after validating the tape, after connecting him directly to evidence destruction, the tone flipped instantly. Suddenly she was weak. She was folding under deep state pressure. She was unstable. She was unreliable. The loyalty he demands becomes a liability when the truth surfaces. Instead of addressing the allegations, he attacked the person forced to reveal them. It was a familiar pattern. But this time, the consequences aren't political annoyance or bad headlines. This time, the consequences are criminal in nature and catastrophic in scale. Because this moment isn't isolated. This isn't one scandal, one bad hearing, one rogue witness. This is convergence. Bondi's testimony links directly to Meadows' statements. Meadows' statements link to the recording. The recording links to Patel's alleged involvement. Patel's situation connects to the DOJ's attempt to close the Epstein review. The DOJ's memo aligns with political pressure inside federal agencies, and the entire web ties directly back to why evidence needed to disappear in the first place. The question hanging over the nation isn't speculative anymore. It's not, did something happen? It's, how much of it can be proven, and who breaks next? Because once the Attorney General herself confirms actions that constitute obstruction, once a recording is authenticated, once corroboration emerges across multiple agencies, once impeachment machinery starts grinding forward, denial becomes impossible. You can challenge motives, you can challenge process, but you can't challenge sworn testimony that aligns perfectly with recorded evidence. Trump's team knows this, his allies know this, his legal advisors know this, and beneath the public outrage, insiders are quietly preparing for what comes next. A cascade of cooperating witnesses, subpoenas targeting Patel, Meadows' testimony being used as a foundational pillar, Bondi's confession accelerating timelines, and political support dissolving faster than any polling model predicted. For Trump, the walls aren't closing in. They've already closed. Bondi sealed them. The tape reinforced them. Meadows outlined them. Patel may soon describe what happened inside them. And the judge, the prosecutors, Congress, and the American public now have a window into what those walls were built to hide. What happens next will depend on who breaks first, who cooperates most, and who decides that saving themselves is more important than saving him. Because after Pam Bondi's bombshell testimony, one truth is unavoidable. The cover-up isn't speculation anymore. It's on the record. And the panic you're seeing isn't politics. It's fear. If you want to stay ahead of this unraveling political earthquake, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single update. This story is evolving by the minute, and what comes next may be even bigger.